Hello student, I am back with another topic of interest. This time we are going to talk about women and education. Women's education aims at every forms of education to improve knowledge and skills for girls and women. It includes general education at schools and colleges, vocational and technical education, professional education and more. Women's education encompasses both literary and non-literary, formal and informal, adult and lifelong education. The importance of education for girls and women are so that they are capable of bringing socio-economic changes. The Constitution of India, like almost all democratic countries, guarantees equal rights to education for both men and women. Until the middle of 19th century, girls and women were trained only in traditional household works. It was the social reform movements undertaken by the socio-religious reformers like H14WD11, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Keshav Karve, Savitri and Jyoti Rao Phule during British Council times, which generated the awareness on and access to education for women and girls. Now the society is witnessing changes in the role status of women, and therefore there is a greater emphasis on women's education and also education for girls. The educated girls and women can exercise civil, social, political and economic rights. When a woman or a girl is ensured of her rights, the society at large is ensured of its development and sustainability. Girls in pre and primary education. The principal public initiative, Integrated Child Development Services or ICDS, which is popularly known as, aims at responding to the challenge of providing preschool education for children in the age group of 0 to 5 years. ICDS also aims at breaking the vicious cycle of malnutrition, morbidity, reduced learning capacity and mortality. It seeks to improve the nutritional and health status of children in this tender age group to lay the foundation for proper psychological, physical and social development of the children. It also aims to reduce the incidence of mortality, morbidity, malnutrition and school dropout in later childhood years. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act or Right to Education Act, and also known as RTE, is an act of the Parliament of India enacted on 4th of August 2009, upholding the constitutional provision of equal rights of girls and boys to formal education. Primary education is now a fundamental right for both boys and girls in the age group of 6 to 15 years. Primary school enrollment in India has been a success story, largely due to the various governmental programs for children even in remote areas. Since RT Act of 2009, enrollment has reached to 96% and girls are making up 56% of new students between 2007 and 2013. Therefore, it is clear that many problems of access to schooling have been addressed, like the improvements to infrastructure, like classroom, toilet, water and sanitation, which have been priorities since decades. India now has 1.4 million schools and 7.7 million teachers, so that 98% of habitations have a primary school, that is from class 1 to 5 within 1 kilometer, and 92% have an upper primary school, that is class 6 to 8 within a 3 kilometer walking distance. Despite many improvements in primary education, keeping children in school for longer term is still an issue. Children, especially girls, drop out from schools at a higher rate. Nationally, 29% of children drop out before completing 5 years of primary schooling and 43% before finishing upper primary schooling. This makes India among the top 5 nations for out of school children of primary school age. In fact, 8.15 million, that is 4.28% of 6 to 14 years old children are not still attending school in India, among which girl children population is higher than the boys. For scheduled caste and scheduled tribe girls, the gender gap in education is almost 30% at the primary level and 26% at the upper primary stage. In most remote regions, the probability of girls getting primary education is just about 42%, lower than boys, and it remains so even when other variables such as religion and caste are controlled. To bridge this gender gap of enrollment, the Indian government has made female education as a priority. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, or SSA, or better known as Education for All, is a flagship program for the achievement of universal primary education. It places special emphasis on female education and the achievement of gender parity, targeted to be attained for the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs. Moreover, with a view to enhancing enrollment, retention and attendance, and simultaneously improving nutritional levels among primary school children, the National Program of Nutritional Support to Primary Education was launched in August 1995. During 2008 and 9, the scheme was extended to cover children in upper primary classes, and the scheme was renamed as National Program of Midday Meal in Schools. However, in many ways, schools are not equipped to handle the full population due to shortage of teachers, almost 6,89,000 in primary schools. Moreover, only 53% of schools have functional girls' toilets and 74% have access to drinking water. According to the NGO Pratham's Annual Status of Education 2016 report, the quality of learning is a major issue in all schools, and children are not achieving class appropriate levels of teaching and learning. Close to 78% of children in Standard 3 and about 50% of children in Standard 5 cannot yet read Standard 2 text. Only 26% in Standard 5 can do arithmetic problem. Children cannot effectively progress in the education system without the improvement of quality learning in schools, and it is thus the next big challenge for both the state and central governments. Improving learning will require attention to many things, including increasing teacher accountability. Teachers' attendance is just about 85% in primary and middle schools. Irrespective of teachers' attendance, there is also better assessments at each standard level is needed. More efficient monitoring and support systems are needed. Better management system are also specific needs for improvement in primary education system are needed. Universalization of elementary education in India targets universal access and enrollment, universal retention, bridging gender and social category gaps in primary and upper primary education, and elementary education of satisfactory quality. Women in secondary and higher secondary education. The number of secondary schools, that is class 9 and 10, and age group of catering to the age group of 14 and 15 years, and higher secondary schools class 11 and 12 catering to the age group of 16 and 17 years, has increased from 1,26,047 in 2000-2001 to 2,37,111 in 2013-14. The expansion of secondary and higher secondary schools or sections has resulted in considerable increase in enrollment in secondary and higher secondary education. Between 2000 and 2001 and 2013 and 14, the enrollment in secondary higher secondary education has increased by 32 million from 27.6 million to 59.6 million. The enrollment of boys has increased by 14.6 million, while the enrollment of girls increased by 17.4 million during this period. The percentage increase in enrollment was much higher for girls than that for boys. Girls is 162.6%, while boys were only 86.4% percentage increase during the period of 2000 to 2001 to 2013 to 2014. The gross enrollment ratio or GER in secondary education has increased by 24.9 percentage points during this period. GER determines the number of students enrolled in school at several different grade levels on gender basis. It shows the percentage of students enrollment in secondary and higher secondary schools as well as enrollment in courses offered by the National Institute of Open Schooling (NIOS). The open and distance learning programs have been initiated as a project in 1979 by the Central Board of Secondary Education or CBSE, and now it has emerged as an important system of education for meeting the learning needs of young boys and girls in India due to transport limitations and mobility restrictions. The increase in GR has been higher for girls 31.2 percentage points than that for boys 19.4 percentage points during the period of 2004 and 5 to 2013 and 14. The Gender Parity Index or GPI for GER in secondary education for classes 9 to 10 improved from 0.79 in 2004-2005 to 1 in 2013 and 14, while the GPI for GER in higher secondary education improved from 0.80 to 0.98 during this period. However, overall high school completion rate is only about 42%. Therefore, a nationwide effort for adult and continuing education was set in motion with the establishment of National Literacy Mission (NLM) in 1988. The NLM sought to ensure that the total literacy campaign carried on to the continuing education in order to provide lifelong learning for people of India who miss or drop out formal school education due to various circumstances. According to the criteria followed in censuses in India, a person aged 7 years and above with the ability to both read and write with understanding in any language is treated as literate. The increased enrollment at the elementary and secondary stages and the expansion of adult education programs have resulted in substantial increase in youth literacy rate between the age group of 15 to 24 years. The increase in youth literacy rate in the age group of 15 to 24 years was higher for females, that is the percentage is about 14.1 percentage points, than for males 5.85 percentage points. The gender gap in youth literacy rate declined from 16.44 percentage points in 2001 to 8.2 percentage points in 2011. There is an improvement in gender parity in literacy rates. The number of female literates per 100 male literates has gone up from 71 to 80 during the period 2001 to 2011 census of India. Despite an impressive increase in literacy rate among population aged 15 years and above during the period of 2001 and 11, wide gender and regional disparities in adult literacy levels persist. Nationally, the gender gap was 19.5 percentage points, 9.5% more than the targeted 10%. Only 7 states and union territories achieved the target of reducing gender gap in adult literacy rates to less than 10 percentage points. These states and UTs are in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which has 9.5 percentage points of literacy rate, Goa 9.1 percentage points of literacy rate, Kerala 4.6 percentage points of literacy rate, Lakshadweep 9.1 percentage points of literacy rate, Meghalaya 5.1 percentage points of literacy rate, Mizoram 4.8 percentage points of literacy rate, and Nagaland 8.4 percentage points of literacy rate. Women in higher and tertiary education. The issue of women entering in higher education came firmly from the global political agenda in 1998 under the leadership of UNESCO, which prepared the higher education and women issues and perspectives for the 1998 World Conference on Higher Education, specially focused on the issues related to women. However, in India, it was much earlier by the Kothari Commission of 1964-66 that had emphasized on equal education opportunities for women and had also suggested effective steps to achieve it. As pointed out by Professor Karuna Chanana, the first two 5-year plans 1951-56 and 1956-61 acknowledged the problems related to women's education and trying to link education and employment. It was after the publication of the report of the Committee on the Education for Women in 1959 that led to a more focused attention, which later got sharpened with report of the Committee on the Status of Women in 1974, and women's education was placed within the broader framework of development issues. The National Policy of Education 1986 Broadening the vision further underscored the role of education in empowering women that would overcome inequalities and disparities. Subsequent 5-year plans and various committees, including the National Perspective Plan of 1988-2000, have stressed the need for greater participation of women in higher education. These efforts have resulted in increase in women accessing higher education. The dropout rates, that is the percentage of students who drop out from a given level of education between school education, have fallen to 18.3% from 2000 to 2014. The enrollment in higher education has grown at a CAGR of about 44.5%, with total enrollment in different years of study in higher education in India with about 29.6 million students by 2013. According to All India Survey on Higher Education 2012-13, the gross enrollment ratio, or GER, which is the total enrollment of students in a given level of education among the age group of 18 to 23 years in higher education in India, is about 21.1, male 22.3 and female 19.8, gender gap being is 2.5. Gender Parity Index, GPI, that is the ratio of girls to boys in a given level of education for the same age group among all categories of students in higher education in India, is 0.89, where AC 0.89, ST 0.79. Number of girls per 100 boys enrolled in higher education in India is 2012-13 is 81, which is a steep rise from 13 in 1950-51. Dropout rate among age group 18 and 23 years in higher education in India is not available, and it may be estimated from the available data of AISHE 2012-13. This data is given in the table shown to you. Among dropout population, 51.5% are male and 49.1% are female students if you look at the table. Gender gap in dropout population is 2.4% only. This is due to the fact that male students in the age group of 18 to 23 years drop out to meet the societal or gender stereotypic demand for being a breadwinner in the family, while female students in the same age group drop out to meet the societal or gender stereotypic demand for marriage. We have to notice here that there is a large gender gap of 10.2% between the male and female students enrolled in higher education than the population demography and dropout statistics. This table can explain the social discrimination on women in the age group of 18 to 23 years to not enroll in higher education due to priority given on marriage, childbearing and family care. According to Gandhi Kingdon 2000 in his book in 2010, the gender gap in educational attainment in India can be potentially explained by differential treatment of sons and daughters by parents. Girls face significantly different treatment in the intra-household allocation and expenses on education, and there is a large unexplained component in the gender gap in education attainment. According to National Sample Survey Organization, most students choose higher education but drop out even more. Survey comparing data from 1991-2000 to 2001-2010 period found that attendance rates in the higher education increased by 71% for male students and 110% for female students in rural areas. In urban areas, the growth was 40% for males and 45% for females. Although the rise in percentage terms is a marked improvement over the decades, the data showed that the dropout rate also kept its pace. In 2009-10, the attendance rates were just 19% for urban areas, corresponding figures were 33% and 24% respectively. This state of higher education compared badly with those in the age group of 5 to 14 years, where 87% boys and 84% girls were attending school in rural areas and 91% of all boys and girls in urban areas. While current attendance rates indicate a positive trend for the future, existing educational levels of population in the age group of 15 years and above continue to be dismal. This is much higher than the rural areas where only 3.7% of males and a mere 1.67% of females have gone up to graduation or beyond. What is even more alarming is that in 10 years between 1999-2000 and 2009-2010, the graduate and above segment of the urban population declined by 10% among females. Due to rural-urban differential, the new social demand for education in the rural areas is still driving educational levels higher. The proportion of graduates and above went up by 78% among females, but only 12% in males in rural areas. In urban areas, about 15% of males and 11% of females are graduates or above. To arrest this trend of dropout, central and state governments are offering scholarships to promote higher education among students belonging to the weaker sections of the society who are unable to further their education for some reason or other. There are a variety of scholarships, merit-based, need-based, student-specific, career-specific, college-specific, available for women students. Look at the table on factors and reasons for dropout. The table explains the societal and familial priorities against education for women and thus the stated reasons for dropout by young women from completing their higher education. Reproductive role of women is so demanding in society that the dropout from education primarily occurs due to early marriage and immediate pregnancy in a physically and mentally premature age of 18 to 20 years. Sexual and gender-based violence in public and private places is another major deterring factor for dropout, since young girls are traditionally guarded by family to protect their purity and virginity for marriage. Gender stereotypes are rampant and constrains girls' and women's freedom of choice and voice, independence and mobility, development and empowerment. Gender stereotypes are overgeneralizations of male versus female characteristics of an entire group based on their gender roles in society. In every society, there is positive stereotype for men but negative stereotype for women. Girls and women's domestic work in family and care for members like child, adult, aged are superimposed as common good against their own needs and development or personal good in a patriarchal society. Hence, they are expected to sacrifice education for economic demands of family maintenance and or earning or saving for their own or siblings' cost and payments for their marriage. Social restrictions and family time demands constantly conflict with women's education and development. Lack of support from government, both central and state governments, education institutions, family, community, make it even more difficult for women to continue their higher studies. Health and environment needs for women in education institutions are also neglected, leading to their dropout. Their gender-specific needs like separate common room or restrooms and toilets are necessary for young women to feel safe and secure when away from home environment. Nonetheless, academic demands are also high in higher education, like English, which is a foreign language of instruction, lack of interest in subject due to parents' choice than their own, and lack of understanding and training to cope with the studying and learning methods for higher education. All these socio-culturally, economically interdependent factors add up to substantial reasons for dropout by young college and university going women from higher education. In the summary, I would like to talk about the importance of women's education. First, economic development and prosperity. Education will empower women to come forward and contribute towards the development and prosperity of the country. Second, economic empowerment. So long as women remain backward and economically dependent on men, the helpless condition of them cannot be changed. Economic empowerment and independence will only come through proper education and leading to employment of women. Third, improved life. Education helps a woman to live a good life. Her identity as an individual would never get lost. She can read and learn about her rights. Her rights would not get trodden down. The life or condition of women would improve a lot if we take a broad outlook in the field of female education. Fourth, improved health. Educated girls and women are aware of the importance of health and hygiene. Through health education, they are empowered to lead a healthy lifestyle. Educated mothers can take better care both herself and her baby. Fifth, dignity and honor. Educated women are now looked upon with dignity and honor. They become a source of inspiration for millions of young girls and women who make them their role models. Sixth, justice. Educated women are more informed of their rights for justice. It would eventually lead to decline in instances of violence and injustice against women such as dowry, forced prostitution, child marriage, female feticide and other gender-based violence. Seventh, choice to choose a profession of her own. Educated women can prove to be highly successful in the fields of life and career. A girl child should get equal opportunity for education so that she can plan to become a successful doctor, engineer, manager, entrepreneur, leader, or choose any profession of her choice. Eighth, alleviation of poverty. Women education is a prerequisite to alleviate poverty. This would demand contributions from educated women too. There cannot be much social and economic changes unless girls and women are given their rights for education. Thank you. I hope you had really understood the need of education for women, and the education is not for only primary level. It is also primary, secondary, higher education as well as tertiary educations are important for all girls and women in India.